Whoa, Nelly, let me tell you about aspiration.com. So you can go to the head of the line by going to aspiration.com/TYT, and you don't have to wait on the wait list. There's free access to ATMs all across the world. There's no monthly service fee. I know it just gets better. 10% of their revenue goes to charity. I mean, it doesn't get any more lib than this, and no funding of political campaigns or industry lobbying. So if you were looking for a progressive place to put your money, I think we've got your answer for you, aspiration.com.
Okay, one more topic?
Yes.
Okay. I want to ask you a very serious question. Does it actually matter if Joe Biden runs in this Democratic nominating process? That might seem silly, I guess. He's this gigantic name in some of the polls. He's leading, and he certainly was in past months and all that. And so the question of, is he going to announce, seems so important. And so we look to things like he apparently has been hiring staff in New Hampshire, which seems to be giving up the game a little bit on whether he's gonna run. But we look to that, to recent quotes like him saying, there's a consensus, the most important people in my life want me to run. And it took a while for him to get quotes from all of the big donors, but there's a consensus. I'm kidding, he probably means family. And so everybody wants to know, is he going to run? Is he gonna run? He might actually announce this weekend or very soon after. But the thing is, like, I think that his chances have sort of gotten away from him, because so much of what he has been doing, both recently and more that's coming up and being talked about more commonly from his past, sounds like major impediments to him actually winning this thing. And so I just want to have a conversation. Does it matter? Does Biden running severely hurt the chances of Bernie winning or another candidate? No. Because I think that the Biden boosters definitely think that that's the case.
Yeah, I have plenty of controversial opinions on this, so let's buckle up. First of all, I think it helps Bernie's chance of winning if Biden runs, okay? And I'll tell you why. Because the establishment will then split up their vote. And so what they're gonna wanna do is, and the donors will, if they haven't already realized it, will realize it soon enough, and you'll see people getting out of the race quicker than you imagined. And this happened on the Republican side, but briefly, like in the beginning, and then people dug in their heels.
Yeah.
Like Scott Walker, everybody thought he had a pretty good chance of winning way back in the day in 2015, and the donors were like, oh, Trump might win, and we don't want that, so everybody rally around someone else, and they're like, Scott, here's your walk-in papers.
Yeah.
So go do as your name says, Walker. Right, and he walked right out of the race, and so the donors will send the walking papers to a bunch of Democrats, and they'll leave because they don't want to split up the vote. And so, whereas I do want them to split up the vote. Okay, I'm keeping it real, and I'll tell you, I want a progressive to win. Here's a controversial point number 2, which is fun. I think Biden's too old. So here's what I mean. So that's, of course, we laugh because Bernie Sanders is a year older than him, and that's the main complaint that Sanders gets. And I don't mean age-wise, I mean in his way of thinking. And by the way, it's arguable that Bernie Sanders is so old that he came back around. His ideas came back around because like they were popular in the 1960s and the 1970s, and then he stuck around long enough that they came back into vogue. But Biden was just old enough to get stuck in the 1980s and 90s. And those opinions did not age well. Now, to be fair to Biden, he also did some wonderful things in the Senate and throughout his career, and things that were progressive for the time. But he has, as a mindset, has not gotten out of the 1990s. That is why he goes around making out with Republicans and thinks like, oh man, I'm gonna get a lot of credit for this. Oh, Fred Upton's awesome. Mike Pence is a wonderful guy. Yeah, go ahead, read the quote.
Okay, so this is very recently. He said it was following from something that happened with Pence. But the fact of the matter is, it was followed on by a guy who's a decent guy, our vice president, who stood before this group of allies and leaders and said, I'm here on behalf of President Trump, and there was dead silence, dead silence. So he was criticized for calling Mike Pence a decent guy because Mike Pence is not a decent guy, he's an awful guy in a number of different areas. Cynthia Nixon criticized him on Twitter, and he responded saying, I was making a point in a foreign policy context that under normal circumstances, a vice president wouldn't be given a silent reaction on the world stage. But there is nothing decent about being anti-LGBTQ rights, and that includes the vice president. So another one of those classic Biden gaffes.
Was it a gaffe? Okay.
No, I'm not saying gaffes as in an accident. I'm saying it's a gaffe.
Oh, it's just what he does. He says the wrong thing.
Should not have done that.
Can I break this BS up?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. They've had enough of my BS. Now, please break it up.
Okay, so man, I have a book I've wrote down while you guys were saying all this ridiculousness. Okay, so people in 2020, people are gonna remember 2016 as a missed opportunity. Hillary Clinton was shafted. Oh my God, Trump was colluding with Russians, and it totally flipped everything over. You know who we missed out on? We missed out on Biden. There's people still exist. We talked about former Hillary staffers that went after Bernie and undercut him, and now this story's out in Politico or whatever. I don't want to bash Politico if it wasn't the source. Stories go out into the media, and then they go, man, I can't believe these staffers have put these hit pieces on Bernie. Hey, there's plenty of them, and they're gonna continue to do it because they still don't like Bernie Sanders. Just don't forget that part. We're in this bubble that Bernie Sanders is loved by everybody, and he's not. Now, for reasons that are horrible, he's not loved by everyone, but you still got Hillary supporters that will never vote for Bernie Sanders, and they still exist. The hokiness of Joe Biden walking around going, yeah, you know what? He's stuck in the 80s and 90s, isn't he? There's plenty of Democratic voters who don't like Donald Trump, who don't like conservative policies, who don't like all the things that Republicans do, that are stuck in the 80s and 90s way of hokiness. We're in Los Angeles, California. We are not in Minnesota. We're not in Michigan. We're not in Illinois. We're not in Alabama. And we're not in Texas. But there's people there that are like, man, I'm so tired of these establishment Republicans. I want my establishment Democrat in office. There's a lot of them. We're in this whole circle where we're thinking, oh man, he's so old that we can't even keep track of him. People like old people. They like old Democrats. Old Democrats are nice, happy, fun people for a lot. We talk about the viewership of Fox News, and they're so old. I think there's a pretty good percentage of old Democratic MSNBC and CNN viewership. They love Joe Biden. And lastly, there's more, but this I'm gonna say for now. You know who people miss? Oh man, Trump is in office. You know we miss Obama. You know who was always right next to Obama? This guy.
That's
and then you look at Biden and you go, oh yeah. And you have this weird image, it's like a ghost of Obama next to him. You're like, I'm gonna vote for Biden because I want another 4 years of Obama. Yeah. It's just he carries that with him.
He does.
And we remember thinking he lost his son tragically before that last cycle. And we're like, oh man, if Biden had just got in, we wouldn't be in this disaster that we're in right now. It's our second chance.
That's why a lot of people might vote for him over Kamala Harris or Beto O'Rourke or Cory Booker.
So I guess I'm not saying he will win, but I'm saying it's obvious he has a chance.
Okay, so it does matter if he runs.
Yeah, okay.
You're very clear on that.
So look, of course Jared makes good points, and I don't want you to misinterpret what I'm saying. I'm not in the establishment media camp that says like, oh, I don't like Bernie Sanders, so he has no chance of winning, right? Biden's leading right now. Let's acknowledge that.
Yeah.
We care about facts. Yeah, so
polls?
Yes.
Okay, so first poll is what will be one of the first primaries that'll happen, and if there's anything you can take to the bank, it's individual state primary polls like 3 years out. But the Granite State poll conducted by the University of New Hampshire Survey Center shows Sanders atop the Democratic field with 26% of likely Democratic primary voters in New Hampshire, followed by Biden at 22%. And when you go nationwide overall, the two most recent ones are the Harvard-Harris poll had Biden at 30%, Sanders at 19%, Harris at 10, Warren at 4. But the Morning Consult poll had Biden at 29, Sanders at 27, Harris at 10, Warren at 7.
Yeah, so since he's leading in a lot of the national polls, and he does a lot of goodwill, JR's right about that. Am I saying that if I was Biden counselor, would I tell him not to run? Are you crazy? You got a decent shot at it, brother. Of course you're gonna run.
Yeah.
You'd be nuts not to run. You're leading in the polls. What are you, this is a conversation? Well, it is, literally, it's a second conversation, but okay. So if I was his advisor, I'd be like, run, Forrest, run, right? So I get it. I mean, you don't want to pass up that opportunity. Okay, my political analysis, you take it for what it's worth, is that John is right. He's gonna make way too many gaps because he's stuck in the 90s and he thinks like kumbaya and that used to work and the press loved that. Oh, you're getting along with the Republicans. Bravo, bravo. Democratic voters do not wanna hear that you're getting along with the Republicans. So he's gonna do that mistake 1,000 times over. He's gonna make another 1,000 mistakes because he's Joe Biden. I've seen him my whole life. I've had Joe Biden in politics. And guys, I've seen him run for office now multiple times. He fades, he's a fader, okay? Once the race starts, Biden goes, okay. Now it might be different times, and I might be wrong about that. Again, I'm not in the camp of like, people shouldn't run, okay? There is an anointed one.
Yeah.
No, have at it, Hoss, run. You got every right to run, you should run. But my political sense is that he will not be a real factor. I've never had him in the Final Four, and I don't think he will be.
So I want to give just a couple more issues he might have and then sort of a brief my analysis. But bear in mind, I don't think that Biden is one of the worst people in the country, one of the worst politicians. So some people can't differentiate criticizing a person from thinking that they're literally Satan. I'm able to do that. So
I'm sitting right here, John.
Think about, but some of, this is more BS, so I apologize. So think about some of the things that Bernie is getting criticized for that hypothetically could be applied to other people. So Joe Biden, like, do you remember Anita Hill? Like that's not going to be good for him. Not only did he vote for the crime bill, which I get it, others did too, but he was one of the chief architects and pushers of that bill. That is going to be a gigantic problem. I believe. Don't quote me on this. I think Ken Klippenstein was talking about this on Twitter. I think he's out of the 500 people who are going to be running, he is the only one who will have voted for the war in Iraq, correct?
So I know he voted for the war in Iraq, and that's not going to play well either. Just ask Hillary how that turned out.
These are just more potential problems for him, let alone the gaffes and all of that. Let alone that I think his reputation with working class, white voters or whatever is probably being exaggerated. Yeah, I think it's going to be really problematic, and I think we know what will happen to his voter. We have some polling of what will happen to his voters if he doesn't run. The plurality would go to Sanders actually, and then to Kamala Harris and Warren. But I think if he does run, look, he's going to be contrasted with Bernie on policy, obviously, and he's going to be closer to some people like Klobuchar and Gillibrand and probably Beto O'Rourke to some extent, and Kamala Harris too. And the thing is, like, if Biden is up on that stage and you're that sort of voter, okay. But you're gonna find some of these other candidates like Kamala Harris way more appealing. And so I think that his support is gonna flee. Some of it will go to Bernie, but more will probably go to like Kamala Harris and stuff.
That's why I think she has a good chance too.
Yeah,
maybe.
And they do. I mean, I think Kamala Harris has a really good chance. And if I think that, why not Biden? But for all the reasons that I explained.
Yeah.
So, but the great thing is we believe in primaries. So, and we believe that it gives people a chance to sort these things out. Look, it's not to say the primaries are perfect. Hillary Clinton had a giant name recognition lead over Bernie Sanders, and I think that was instrumental in her win. But on the other hand, a young guy named Barack Obama came up and beat Hillary Clinton in 2008 anyway. So I think everybody's got a fair shot, and that's how it should be. Unlike the other side, we don't think that the people that we believe in should never be challenged, right? Challenge, that's the whole point of a primary, and then let's figure out who the American people want. And in this case, whether it's Biden or Bernie Sanders, they both have plenty of name recognition. So it's an even, I mean, Biden's even more than Sanders, but that's okay. It's an even enough playing field. Now let's go find out who people like more. 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.